So first of all, my name's Katie Cook. I'm the Impact Fellow and Project Manager for Exemplar, which is a UKRI funded project, EPSR funded project with the University of Exeter, 18-month project and 1.2 million grant with two co-PIs, which are Professor Peter Hopkinson, who's joining us today, who's also co-director of the Exeter Circular Economy Centre, and also Professor Tamara Galloway, who's an ecotoxicology lead here at the University of Exeter, and along with 19 other co-Is across marine biology. We've got Brendan with us today, Xiaoyu Yan, and we've got engineering, psychology. We're looking at ways in which we can use a circular economy approach to look at how to reduce plastic waste in the southwest of England. We also have an e-platform, which you can see there, exemplarnet.org.uk. I'd very much like it if all of you could become members. As you can see just in the top there, we've got a hub that shows you how to get involved just there. And we've got individual hubs on various aspects of the project to enable you to share your information, your knowledge, expertise and data, etc. And in there, I've put a new hub, which is all about fishing and plastic waste, so that we can hear about all of the wonderful innovative work that the fishing industry is doing, because we hear that they're being very proactive in this. And we will hear from our panel members in a minute. So our panel members, as we said, we're going to start off with Maru, who's one of our postdocs, and she will be able to introduce her particular research looking at the fishing industry and marine sector and plastic waste in the southwest. And then we'll move on to Jonathan Harvey from the Environment Agency, who can share his work, which he's been doing an awful lot collaborating with the fishing industry on how best to seek opportunities to recycle waste, etc. We've got Adam Parnell, who'll give us an update from the Harbour Commission in Torbay. And we've also got Jasper Graham-Jones from the University of Plymouth, who's heading up an EU Interreg project called Indigo. He can tell us more about that. And finally, Rob Thompson from Odyssey Innovations, who will be able to share his knowledge of recycling various fishing, plastic waste, etc. And what we'd like to get out of today is to look at the potential challenges, the barriers and the potential opportunities for trying to redesign plastic waste out of the system and this particular sector. So I'm going to hand over now to Maru, and she'll be able to take us through. I think Maru's got some slides to share with us.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Can you see my slides now?
Yeah. Oh, and just to say, Maru, we are everybody, each of the panel are going to do about a 5 to 6 minute presentation or a talk and provide us with information. And then after that, we're going to leave the questions till the end. You can also put your questions in the chat box on the right hand side, and as this will be recorded, we'll be able to get back to you within the next couple of weeks if you're either sharing information or if you've got any further questions. But please feel free to ask questions at the end. Thank you. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Katie. I am Maru Correa. Hello everybody. I am working at the Exemplar project at the University of Exeter in Penryn campus, and today I'm going to talk about fisheries plastic waste in the southwest of the UK. As part of the Exemplar project, which is interdisciplinary and a bit complex, I am working on the working package 3, which aims to create a plastics system evaluation tool. In order to do that, we need to collect data about plastics across the industries and sectors in the southwest. And one of my tasks is to collect data on the plastics on fisheries. Fisheries is a very complex industry, a very complex sector. Therefore, I am only focused from the beginning to the capture production section of this complex sector. And from that, I am only considering fishing gears. But why fishing gears? Well, fishing gears, when they got lost, abandoned, or discarded, they can cause very big problems. And they actually represent a very important proportion of the total plastic recovered from the oceans. And so, for example, in the North Pacific Ocean in 2018, 46% of all the total waste was only fishing gear. And so it is really important not only to recover all this plastic waste for the oceans, but we also need to know how much fishing gear is there in use in one single season or in one single year. We need to know how much is the flow over the year, how much is going to be in a way wasted at the end of the life cycle. So in order to do that, well, I'm going to jump this now. In order to do that, I am focusing on the Southwest ports, in 18 of the 19 Southwest ports. And a summary of the fleet landings in 2017 shows that there were 16,282 vessels across the Southwest, and most of them were under the category of 10 meters and under. And from them, just move this. These vessels use mainly 4 types of gear categories that includes drift and fixed nets, demersal, trawl sinus, bottom traps, and beam trawls. So therefore, to do my estimations of fishing gear, I focus only on these gear categories. To start, I recover information in 2 stages. One was review of the current information. The second one was search for specific information on per gear type and the specific species, target specific species. All this data was recorded in Excel spreadsheets and in GIS format when possible. So all of my estimations were focused on pods, fixed and drift nets, and demersal, except beam trawl. Input for beam trawl data were kindly shared by John Harvey from the Environment Agency. What I did to do my estimations, these are theoretical estimations. Therefore, I base my estimations on an idealization of the elements of a net. If we know the length and the height of a net, and we know that each net panel might be composed of a mesh size, squares that have a known mesh size, I could know the letter A on this figure, which is the side of a square. So based on this, I use these as parameters to know, for example, if we get one net and we disentangle of a net, we might end up with a single filament of plastic. And this filament is a very, very thin cylinder. And so that cylinder might be quantified as a volume. I can quantify the volume of that cylinder and in the end, the weight of that cylinder. So based on those parameters, I use those to estimate the weight of a fish net across all the vessels on the Southwest. So this is one example only for a hake net, considering a determined mesh size of 0.125 meters mesh size. I estimated that one single net might weigh 3.33 kilograms. And for large netters that they might use up to 200 nets, for example, the weight of 200 nets might add a total of 700 kilograms. So this is only for one example, for one vessel that is using one single net. But using all that information for all the vessels that using these different type of gears, I estimated preliminary estimations, a grand total of up to 6,000 tons of fishing gear being in use in one single year in the Southwest. So these are preliminary estimations, and these are theoretical estimations based on parameters. And of course, we will need to adjust this further. And for doing that, to do further estimations, today we will launch 2 surveys focused targeted to port managers and fleet managers, which will help us to adjust of these calculations. It's the first stage, but this kind of data will help not only to example project, but to all the programs that are targeting and quantifying how much plastic waste is out there and what we can do to solve this problem. So that's it for me, and I will pass it to John Harvey now.
Thank you, Mary.
My name is Jonathan Harvey. I work at the Environment Agency in the Plastics and Sustainability team. And we've been working to support circular economy opportunities for fishing industry waste. And we wanted to support this webinar really with University of Exeter. So thank you very much, Katie, for your work on this as an opportunity for knowledge sharing and coordination between all the different projects and stakeholders working towards these same aims. So just making sure there's no duplicated effort. Next slide. What we do as an organisation, we work to create a better place for people and wildlife and support sustainable development. So that's Environment Agency. And particularly in terms of plastics, we as an organisation are trying to support businesses, communities and NGOs to take initiatives to reduce plastics getting into the ocean. So I can talk a few minutes about some of the impacts of abandoned lost derelict fishing gear and some of the work of our activity over the last year, including some of our work with Maru and University of Exeter. So just quite briefly, fouling of propellers by abandoned lost derelict fishing gear cost up to £2.1 million per year. And although it doesn't appear to be South West specific data, Chemo in 2010 have investigated the impacts on lost gear for Scotland, and they estimated the cost was between 11.7 and 13 million on average per annum. And this represents 5% of total revenue for those affected fisheries. It also has impacts on species of conservation concern, and entanglement has now been reported for over 344 species. So the aims when we started this project, we wanted to research how the industry operates, including waste practice, developing good practice with the industry and increasing awareness, and supporting projects around circular economy. So this is similar data that I shared with Maru from the MMO, and this is for under and over 10 metre size class of vessels. And as you can see, there's a real variation in activity across the Southwest, and that's going to affect the composition of the waste stream. So in red, you've got shellfish trawls, bottom trawls in yellow, and orange for mid-water column. So as you can see, it's the big three of Brixham, Plymouth and Newlyn from right to left. And it's really the low value of this material that's a real challenge for a circular economy, because it needs to be competitive. So we interviewed a couple of different organisations as well to get a good understanding about what types of facilities exist across the Southwest. This data is from last year, and so there might be some new data points since then. But again, all of the feedback we got is just that there's the low value of these materials that's just a really a big challenge to come across. In terms of impact, this is some published data that was used using Marine Conservation Society Big Beach Clean data by Sarah Nelms. And this is the mean number of fishing litter items that were found during beach cleans. And this has been standardised into units of items per minute, surveys per metre squared, per person for each location. And I think the take home from this is that there's a real hotspot of fishing related marine litter in the Southwest. But this is unsurprising given the high amount of activity within the Southwest as well. So that kind of makes sense. So although the units are quite small, the red hotspots are basically where one person walking for 1 kilometre for 1 hour would find 34 pieces of fishing related marine litter. So we've done some social science research with University of Plymouth while engaging active fishermen about waste. And this has fed into our engagement work and development of advice and guidance when we're doing work with fishermen. And similarly, not just hazardous waste, but also plastics. So we've been working with Brixham Harbour and Adam, and he's now putting in some hard plastic recycling collection points, which is fantastic. And the picture on the left is the Ocean Recovering Project through Keep Britain Tidy, and that's them recycling woke pots from Teignmouth, where I'm from. Quite early in the project as well, we supported Seafish on data collection methods, which we then sent on to Maru. So that's some of the beam trawl data that Maru was alluding to. So thanks to Odyssey and Adam and Seafish for all that work. And as you can see from the graph, there's a large number of materials that make up just one 12-metre beam trawl net. And this is after the metal fraction had been removed. So some of the barriers to net recycling is around net processing costs, if you include them, the difficulty of disposal for some of these fractions, so things like rubbers and some of the other residuals as well. And so more work is needed to ensure not just environmental sustainability, but also economic long-term viability when it comes to recycling of fishing industry waste. Moving forwards, I think our work in the future is going to be around advice and guidance to port managers and port users, and supporting and encouraging adoption of circular economy solutions by regulated industry, and also supporting industry through our work with catchment partnerships and supporting the good work that's already happening and it's been led really by the South West. Thanks for your time, and any questions, happy to help out in the chat.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Jonathan. We're going to move on now to Adam Parnell, Harbour Commissioner for Torbay. Adam, are you there?
Yeah, hang on, I'm just going to be untechnical and try to switch my video back on. 2 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Right, hopefully you can all see me now. Good afternoon, everybody. So as you've heard, I've put my fancy dress on, especially for you guys. I'm actually working at home, as I guess most of you are, but I thought it might ease recognition. And I thought I'd give you a very brief overview from the waterfront, if you like, having listened to Maru's information, and I can absolutely relate to everything she said there, especially about the under 10s and John's as well. Now, I've been working quite closely with both John and with Rob Thompson of Odyssey Innovations, who I believe is going to speak later, and Neil Hembrow, who I know is in the net today, and he's been one of the people that's been collecting this stuff from me. So let me just give you the sort of the view as I see it, and some good, some bad, as you would expect, with what is still quite a nascent sort of recycling and circular economy sort of that's not yet fully established. So let's put this into context. You heard about the big 3 fishing ports in the southwest, of which Brixham is one of them. In terms of the number of vessels, we tend to have the larger beam trawlers. I do have a significant under 10-metre fleet, more of which later, but I'm going to just concentrate to start with on the larger vessels, the sort of the beam trawlers, etc. Now they tend to use HDPE rather than monofilament nets. I've got 21 large beam trawlers, each one of which on average will use 2 nets a year. So, but when I speak to the local net maker, whose nickname is Ed the Net, he manufactures 50 nets per year that go directly to Brixham. He does a lot of other stuff for other countries. In fact, he's recently been out as far as Thailand to try and help them with their net making, and there's a lot of science that goes into net making, a lot more than I ever realized before I took this job on. As a result, some of those nets are replaced only last 6 months. Unfortunately, there is very little reuse of any of those nets because it's with the cost of a net being around £4,000, and the spillover, if you have a poorly designed net from a catch, being getting on for that, actually it doesn't take much. The minute the net falls below about 95-98% efficiency, and that's by no means scientifically judged, it's just a gut feel by the crew, that tends to get discarded on the quayside, and then a new net fitted, and that turnaround is a matter of hours. So for them, a new net is cheap, it's quick, and it gets them back out and doing what they do best very, very swiftly indeed. So I see about 50 nets per year land on the quayside. Each one of those, as you've heard, if you break it down, if you take the average, there's no such thing as an average beam trawl, but a beam trawl, for round numbers, weighs a ton, of which about 450 to 500 kilos is HDPE net. The other 500 odd kilos, unfortunately, and despite our best endeavours, and I'm rather hoping somebody here today amongst the hive mind is going to point me in the direction where I can do anything other than the present, which is landfill. Now, why do we landfill? It's not because we want to. We landfill for a number of reasons. The first one is my landfill cost is cheap. Landfill to me is £110 per tonne, and I'm probably going through about 200 tonnes of end-of-life fishing gear per annum. And that's because of all the wire, the net, and the other things that isn't just nets. The nets, Rob Thompson very kindly takes them for us. He is probably one of the very few waste stream that I can identify for the nets, and for a number of reasons. There are a lot of factors which hinder it. The first one is the labour cost to disassemble. Rob, quite rightly, only wants the plastic. He doesn't want the wire and the rubber and all the rope and all the other detritus that tends to come along as part of a trawl. The labour costs to take one of these down to its constituent parts, and we've done a time and motion study and we've measured it, even at minimum wage, can come in at about £800. So you're looking at a fifth of the price of a net, and that's is end of life. The second one is biofouling. We cannot get rid of the biofouling in the net. It's just there, and a lot of people just do not want to take on any waste streams that are biofouled, and I can understand why. The third thing is it's very difficult to split the composite net into what I would call pure streams. So I can't just have rubber of one grade and wire brackets not plastic coated of one grade and wire brackets plastic coated going into a third area. A lot of this stuff it's all mixed up, it's all mashed up together. It would probably require a lot of industrialization, which we just don't have on the quayside to deal with. Then again, you've got the lack of Marpole regulations in many ways acts as an assistance for the fishermen, because they're not required, most of them, to record where they've landed their fishing gear, because most of them are too small to come under Marpole Annex 5. I can't go along, and nor can any other enforcing agency, and say, you've been operating for a few years now, show me receipts from your licensed disposal operator for where you've sent your end-of-life nets. Just doesn't happen. And in any event, and this is by no means criticism, it's just an observation, in the good old bad old days, a lot of this stuff just fell over the side into the sea, which is clearly something we're trying to avoid. So there's some of the negatives. However, and I think this is a really positive sign, and I think one of the reasons why I'm on this conversation today, the first one is that fishermen are actually really keen to get involved. Ironically, the minute we started doing fishing for litter and we started working with Odyssey Innovations to get rid of the net part of the trawls, the number of nets that arrived and trawls that arrived on my quayside every Monday morning, having mysteriously appeared over the weekend, went through the roof. At present, I'm sitting on about 30 tons of processed HDPE net, which means I've also had to get rid of 30 odd tons of wire. Now that's 60 tons of stuff that is now not in the sea. And I know that I think Rob will correct me, but I think we're in the region of almost that much has gone abroad already to be recycled. So the fishermen really want to get involved in this. What they don't want to do, though, is end up having to pay for it. And they don't want it to be burdensome. Now, I know I'm going on a bit too long here, and I know you're tight for time, so I'm going to move on to the under 10s. For the under 10s, completely different story. Monofilament net, which has a residual value, tends to come, even apart from its head rope, is really easy to disassemble. Doesn't have any non-recyclable parts to it. Tends to get reused, tends to get passed around. So it's been reused, it then gets recycled, and it's done that by the fishermen because they can get money for it. Very rarely do I find, probably 1 or 2% do I find on the quayside. And that, as I say, tends to get reused. And so I think that, to me, although I listened to Maru's presentation with interest about the bulk of the vessels being under 10s, I think, and I could be wrong, that the under 10s are less of an issue than the smaller but more, if you like, weighty, and I mean that in physical terms, problem that I've got with HDPE. I'm happy to take questions or happy to wait until later, but that's my little pitch from the waterfront, if you like.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Adam. Just to confirm, just on that one, how much does a net weigh?
So a net, on average, weighs the net. The HDPE netting is about 500 kilos, 450 to 500 kilos, depending on the side of the beam trawl. But overall, as a trawl, you're looking at about a ton for round numbers.
Ton. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. We'll have questions in a bit. So we're just going to move on to Jasper Graham James. Thank you very much, Adam. Jasper, are you there? Jasper, can you hear us? Let's check if he's still here.
I'm still here. I'm just
Oh,
trying to
fantastic. Jasper, would you like to go ahead? Thank you.
Okay. That work? Is that working?
Brilliant.
Is that work? Yep, that works.
That's it. Perfect. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Afternoon. My name is Jasper Graham Jones. I'm an associate professor at Plymouth University, and we've recently been awarded some funding from the EU. Interreg project. We've got a number of partners. What I'll be doing is just going over the details of the project, and we can have some questions at the end. I have a small team that's slowly developing, and we've got Amanda, Rob. Now Rob hopefully will be joining us as well as a member of staff on the project as well, and Ben and John Summerscales, you might know. Okay. Now, we all know the problem of microplastics. Now, microplastics was initially developed and sort of found back about 20 years ago now at Plymouth, and it's a real problem for this. And this and other activities has brought this really to the issue. And this is sort of where the work that we and others are trying to do. Just putting in the context of this project and other projects. Now, the recycling, yeah, it's interesting to listen to the other presenters here, and really the key problems there, there's multiple tons of fishing gear getting lost, about 1.5 of it actually being recycled, and that is a major issue. And we, hearing the key challenges around that is quite interesting. And in many cases we're trying to get this sort of valuable resource, given that sort of better idea and better understanding and better appreciation of what this can do and where we can lead this. Against that, we've got issues of landfill tax, and I think there's also discussion within the EU of extending producer responsibility on net recycling. And I think a lot of these projects that are going on funded by the EU and the reports that they will produce will sort of lead to further understanding of whether the EU will extend producer responsibility. Within our project, we have sort of specific objectives, generally reducing plastic pollution. But what we're trying to do is implement a more focused recycling process and looking at sort of how we can actually sort of develop an understanding of recycling and all the problems of recycling. One of these is actually developing a Click for Fish application that will link the location of gear lost on the beach or lost somewhere, and try and actually sort of link this back to people who might be able to recycle it or be able to link it through the system. And this is one of the things that we're currently developing as a process. we're also looking, you know, at this recycling process and what we can actually do. It's a major issue in actually developing these programs and systems. Now, biodegradable fishing nets, this is one of these things that will over time become, you know, much more valuable as a way of actually doing it. But there's currently discussion within our group of what this will actually mean and how we can actually do it, and the time, and actually what we can actually do on the technologies. The group, you know, the project is until it's till basically June 2023. That was the last date that we could have due to the Brexit issues problems, and so this is where our project is going to. There's no point, there's no possibility at the moment of extending that. In the UK, we've got CFES, we've got Portsmouth, Marine Southeast, and ourselves. And again, in France, this is led through by South Brittany University as the sort of the lead partner for the program. Now, this slide here shows the overall activities that we're actually doing. I put that up there because we won't be able to go to every single detail because we've got quite a short amount of time, but do have you know, I've left it up there so you can actually see the details of what we're actually trying to do. Thirdly, classic sort of EU project, a situational analysis at the start, looking at the overview of what we can actually do, looking at the market, looking at proposed sort of routes for recycling and net recycling. And this is all sort of linked together. We also have a developing of new products and working with net producers and new formulations to try and sort of get new nets that could be biodegradable. And so the whole point is we are trying to look at recycling issues, and we're also trying to look at new net developments. Within that, we're also trying to work out and what are sort of the, you know, the issues within the fishing industry. What stops people recycling the nets? What stops people going to a recyclable net? You know, these sorts of things. Some of it might be obvious. You know, we all might have hearsay, but what we're trying to do is come up with best practice on all of this. One of the things that we're doing is a best practice on recycling to actually get an idea of how we can help this, and this will be shared throughout the world. So what are in key things? I think we've seen these monofilament nets are, yes, less of a problem, but trawls and other sort of net systems are much more problematic. I think we forget we don't have necessarily a mussel aquaculture in the UK, but in France this is quite big. We've got oyster bags and mussel bags, and so there's a huge amount of this sort of area that is actually quite important for this project, and it's a large chunk of what goes in. There has been surveys of this, and we're working with fishermen ideally on both sides of the channel and into 3 different ports to try and get different ideas, different opinions. I'm real one of the solutions are out there among all of you lot and amongst all the fishermen and all the users of nets and the port authorities. You know, the solutions are actually there for us to work on that. And this is where we're trying to get collection points and good practice guides on the website and actually getting proper details on this. So in the changes that we're trying to do in the short term, we're trying to look at increasing recycling on board, decreasing of net waste generally overall. We are trying to develop biodegradable nets, okay, and as we've sort of spoken about this, there's a, you know, if within this biodegradable process, what is the sort of the limit? Would be 2 or 3 years quite good? It's interesting listening to the Harbour Authority, you know, back there on the last presentation, they were talking 6 months, 95%, you know, and they'd be giving, you know, getting a new net. I know fishermen in other areas that are keen to repair their net and produce, these a different approach. And so this is an interesting thing that we just need to sort of get an angle on. We don't want people who want to repair their nets having an issue with the failure of the net, okay, through it biodegrading away faster before when they want to actually use it. These are an ongoing sort of question. Now, just to get some sort of thought process, what does this bioplastic actually mean? What we're trying to do in the Indigo is effectively looking at this sort of controlled life cycle of these plastics that actually biodegrade over time. And it's a nice way of actually sort of understanding where this sort of comes from. What we're not trying to do is deal with plastics that are not biodegradable, and we're not looking at those sort of processes. We're looking at other plastics that are biodegradable, whether they're from fossil fuel or whether they're from bio-based sources. This is the whole thing. This has been based on some work by Morgan in this University of Brittany, where this was her PhD work, and it all developed these sort of biodegradable polymers.
Okay. I don't know whether you can still hear me, Jesper, but we might need to wrap up. Is that your last slide? That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, that is my last slide. And so there are my contact details. They're the French lead, the contact details there, and there are the links to social media. Please get in touch and send me details.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. I'll save the questions to the end. Thank you very much. That was really, really informative. I'm just going to hand over now to Rob Thompson from Odyssey Innovation. Rob, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, we are running out of time a little bit, but I remember you saying that you were probably going to be relatively quick, so it'd be lovely to—
Yeah, that's fine. Just out of curiosity, are these presentations going to be shared with the rest of the participants?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, I'll just do a whistle stop.
Yeah.
Then. Okay. In which case, right. So basically, Odyssey Innovation has been established to try and help resolve a couple of problems. One was around recycling marine plastics as a whole, how to add value to that, how to get it back into industry, how to capture it. And part of doing that, we found a large part of our waste stream actually came from the fishing industry. So we started looking at potential ways of getting that stuff away and recycled. Very quickly, we came to realize there's only really 2 companies in Europe capable of processing this material. There's quite a lot of challenges when it comes to actual mechanical regeneration of this type of plastic with contamination, etc. So we partnered up with Plastics Global, who are based out in Denmark, and through them, with their sort of UK representative, and our side of the deal was to try and build a network of recycling hubs basically throughout the southwest and now throughout the south coast, to try and create a sort of scalable solution, get the volumes we need to actually reduce the overheads of trying to run a scheme like this, which only really works on scale. To be able to use that as a solution for the fishermen, basically, to actually give them the resources they need to be able to dispose of this stuff sustainably. Originally, we started just looking at the beach clean plastic. We very quickly started working within the harbours originally to help increase the volume of material we're finding to send off to recycling to make it viable. And through that, we realised that actually it's acting as a real preventative solution to the problem of lost fishing gear, that the harbours, everyone we worked in, they had no port reception facilities. There was no way of disposing of this stuff sustainably. So by offering free net recycling facilities to fishermen, we're finding the fishermen are now starting to become part of the solution. Now, when they're out there and they're going through their normal fishing practices and they quite often snag and other people's nets, they've got somewhere they can bring them in to be recycled. Whereas previously, if they were to bring it in, it would be a burden on someone else, whether it's the harbour authority or themselves, to actually cover the cost of landfilling this material. So before running this scheme, really, their options were very limited. It was either burning. Commercial incinerators don't want nets because they tend to clog up their machinery, or sending to landfill. So by offering these solutions, we're starting to help provide resources for fishing communities, but also the beach clean groups. So now another part of the challenge was once a trawl net washes up on the beaches, which we get several through a year in the winter storms, they're very large things to try and remove from the beach, and they can quite easily get washed back out to sea and carry on posing a threat. So we do quite a lot of coordination with several different beach clean groups to recover the nets that have come off the beaches and get those back into the circular economy as well. Here's just a quick slide on plastics. This is a closed loop system, how the stuff goes through, ends up being a pellet. And then from there, what we try to do is we're trying to work more on the circular economy, because as Adam discussed earlier, one of the big challenges with this material is certain elements of it have very low value. So like the HDP, for example. So what we tried to do was not work on the standard recycling model, which is, as a recycler, you take the material, you try and make a direct profit off that material. That's something we can't do. The material doesn't have enough value in it to be able to do that. So we try to look at other systems. So for me personally, it was creating a product. So if I can create a product, I don't need to make money straight off that material. I can actually turn it into something and be reused. So some of the products we've been working on are things like collaborative projects with the Ocean Recovery Project to make bins that are now on several beaches for people to be able to put recyclable material in. We're working on creating net bins now for fishermen. So actually the nets are being turned back into net bins that they can use for their active gear. The kayaks was the first project that we did, which being used through our Paddle for Plastic campaign to get people out into the environment and cleaning up from the otherwise inaccessible coves and rivers and estuaries, and start to be able to pull in that material which otherwise wouldn't be captured. And the most recent one, which we'll be launching in the upcoming months, will be the hand plane, which is a surfing toy, basically, so try and engage the surfing community. So we're very interested in sort of building those links with the various different stakeholders to actually get them interested and help them sort of also realise the value of this material. I have just managed to skip to the top instead of the bottom. There we go. Here we are. So through doing this, what we've managed to do so far is the kayaks alone, we've recycled 50,000 square feet of nets, which is the equivalent footprint that 51 London buses would take up. We're up to about 62 tons that we've sent away now to plastics to be recycled, which has gone off into all sorts of other industries, not just the kayaks. And like Adam pointed out, he's got another 30 tons sat there, and I've got likewise similar amounts in other harbours. So we've got scalability there. The key part of it has been keeping the running costs as low as possible. So our service is literally just coordinating the collections from the various drop-off points and getting that material away to be recycled. That does pose challenges, as Adam pointed out earlier. Like there's more incentives for the fishermen to be processing certain types of nets. Like he mentioned that things like the gill nets, they naturally want to strip them out because they want to be able to use their lead lines off the bottoms. They want to be able to use their floats. They quite often use the ropes, and they're replacing the monofilament gill quite regularly. When it comes to trawl nets, it's much more labour intensive. So there is a shortfall there at times with the actual labour input. How it generally works is in most harbours, they're seeing the cost benefit of not paying for the landfill charges. And that's an incentive that actually helps them with a bit of the processing. Working on really large volumes like Adam's working on, there is a discrepancy there. So we are looking for sort of assistance for sort of helping with some of those challenges. And the same with the transportation. So scalability wise, this element of it doesn't make profit. And as an individual limiting company, I've got far more material than I could possibly ever use. So expanding into more harbours and investing my own funds just purely on for the benefit of gathering more material wouldn't actually be a viable business model. So we've ended up partnering with others that are looking at the intrinsic value of being able to recycle. So it's not recycling to make a direct profit. It's recycling because it's the right thing to do. It's a positive thing for the fishermen to be involved in. It's also capturing valuable material and acting as a preventative measure to ghost gear. So we've had partners come on board like Seafish and Morrison's and Keep Britain Tidy that have helped us funding wise to help expand this scheme. And we're starting to get more partners come on board now throughout the South Coast to be able to help build and expand that. So that's been one of the challenges really, is how do you run a recycling scheme that doesn't make a profit from the materials? And that's the reason why there hasn't been these schemes before in the harbours. So that's been a large part of our problems, and this sort of partnership with other mutually interested parties seems to be a good way around that. So always looking for more partners to come on board and help us expand and replicate in other regions. I'm probably running out of time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these slides up here so people can have a look through at some of the challenges we've found in the past. And if anyone's got any questions, even if you don't have time to potentially come through from this, then our contact details are at the bottom. So please just send us an email. Likewise, if anyone else would like to join in and participate in the scheme. Yeah, so I'll hand back to you for the questions and answers. I think you're on mute still, Katie.
Teresa? Yeah, brilliant.
You're back.
Sorry, there's me talking away to myself. I just wanted to say thank you very much to you and Mary, Jonathan and Adam and Jasper, because it's been incredibly informative, and it just shows the wealth of work and efforts that are going in to try and create a new circular economy in the Southwest from fishing and marine plastic waste. So yeah, for myself personally, and I'm sure our audience will agree, it's been incredibly informative. We have overrun a bit of time, but if people are happy, we could have questions for 10 to 15 minutes. I will be putting up our email address, and I've already put it in the chat room, so if people have further questions, they can send them to me, and then we will be able to get back to you within a couple of weeks. And likewise, we're going to share information about our questionnaires, so I'll ask Mary to do that at the end, and also ask you to become members on our e-platform so that we can continue this discussion. And fundamentally, the two questionnaires that we wish to launch, we'd really like people to get involved and answer those, because that data and information is going to be incredibly helpful. So I'm just looking, if people want to start putting up some questions, I've got a couple actually. For you, Rob, in terms of scalability, and you were talking about coordinating your collections, etc. Do you have good data on the volumes of nets that you're collecting every year, and also where do they actually get recycled in the world?
Okay. Yes, scalability wise, it's something that desperately needs to happen. There needs to be port reception facilities in every harbour. Legislation could help with that massively, but also having the data to back it up. So part of the work we're going to be doing with Plymouth University through the Indigo project is going to help now start to collect that data and quantify it.
Yeah.
We do have data of the collections we've done so far, obviously, and case studies like with Adam in Brixham as well have been really valuable, looking at how the nets are broken down. The data he's provided today, the volumes and stuff, really valuable data. So yeah, data is sort of king in this really, to be able to validate what we're doing. And I can't remember the last part of the question, which was, sorry.
Where it gets recycled, is it within the UK or is it outside, and if so, where is it?
It's with Plastics Global, who are based out in Denmark. They've basically been very forward thinking, and they've invested several £1 million to developing the technology to process this type of netting, and they import nets from all over Europe to actually do that. We try and reduce our carbon footprint by sending that material over there in large volumes. So we use reverse logistics with an Arctic, which carries 90 cubic meters, on average around sort of 18 to 20 tons. And by doing that, we've done the sort of analysis on the carbon reduction, and by getting that material back into industry, there's still a massive carbon saving on actually capturing and recycling that material, even taking into account that sort of shipping.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. I'm just looking at the questions here now. Let me just go back. So we've got Jess Churchill Bissett. Are you still there? Don't know whether she is.
Hi.
Yeah, do you want to answer your question? You were talking about the clarification of labour costs.
Yeah, Adam's just got back to me privately anyway. But yeah, I think it's just to give a better understanding on how much that £800 sort of labour cost goes towards. So how many nets does that strip, or is it in weight? You know, just in terms of clarifying on that.
Yeah, sure. So if you take your average net of 1,000 kilos, 500, like I say, 450 to 500 kilos is actually net. I know that we've got, I haven't got them in front of me, unfortunately, because I'm working from home, but I know that what we've done is we've looked at the costs in terms of pure time to disassemble a net, and then we've looked at what we've been left with, you know, X kilograms of wire, Y kilograms of plastic, Z kilograms of whatever else. And then we've looked at what the recycling costs would be. So take the rubber wheels, if you like, the rollers on the bottom of a large trawl, you know, and I was really interested to listen to Jasper's point, Dr. Jasper's point there about using recyclable materials. You know, until actually quite recently, certainly since I've been alive, most of the fishing fleet used wooden rollers, of which I've still got a few in my office, which I use as rather large coffee mug holders. You know, they're just big wooden wheels, and when they roll out, you can throw them on the fire, or you can just leave them at the bottom of the sea, and I'm sure a lobster will live in it. That's all been replaced by a solid, and I mean solid, lump of rubber, which I have about 15 tons of, and I just, you know, and I'm getting quoted something like £60 each to be recycled. So when I say the £800 labour cost, I'm also looking at what the end user cost would be to actually properly recycle some of that material. So I can provide that later. I just don't have it in front of me right now.
No, that's okay. Thanks. That's very helpful.
Okay, brilliant. Do you have any more questions, Jess, or can I move on to the list I have here?
No, that's fine. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adam. So we've also we've got Martin Sutcliffe, Aquaculture and Fisheries Development Officer from Dorset. Just to clarify, the project is looking at this at the Southwest region, but it's Cornwall, Devon and Somerset within that. But Martin, do you want to ask your question or proffer your information here that you've put in the chat room, the chat box?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's just really to clarify that there is quite extensive mussel cultivation, aquaculture cultivation in Lyme Bay already. Offshore shellfish is one of the largest sites in Europe, and obviously there's a keen appetite from DEFRA and Seafish to develop aquaculture. So the potential to use those kind of aquaculture nets that we saw in the slides, I guess, could increase. That was really the point I was trying to make.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that information and potential for an opportunity. We've also got Stephen Lowe from University of Exeter, one of our own, and he's got a question for Jasper. Stephen, are you there still?
Hear me? I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. I unplugged my mic.
Yes, I can hear you, Stephen.
Good. It's running on the default one then. Yeah, it was just a question about the biodegradability of nets. Wondering if there was a movement towards a standard for biodegradable materials in nets. The only one I'm sort of aware of for marine plastics is the TUV green mark. I don't know too much about that, but there's I included a link to their green mark system, and I was wondering if that's something that could help if there was a biodegradable standard.
Yes, definitely. I think yes. This is one of the problems that we have with the system, is that especially when people come from different sources, you know, this is why I put the slide up there on biosourcing or, you know, oil and gas sourcing. And yes, it is a real issue, because actually different people have different problems. What we don't want to happen is for a net to break down quickly into lots of microplastic, then sits around in the environment for a longer time, you know. So it is an issue that, you know, we need it to biodegrade, but what is the level of that biodegrading? It's not currently clear. The people in France that we've currently got the project with that's the focus of their thing, their project, and actually running a number of tests in different harbours on the north coast, so on the English coast and the south coast in France, to see how that differs as well.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for your question, Stephen. I'm just going to move on, I hope you don't mind, to Holly Pearson. Whilst you're still there, Jasper, it could be another one from you. Holly, you've got a question there?
On Holly, unless Holly can hear it, I've read her question.
Okay.
How long for biodegradable nets to break down? Well, I've seen some data where this group in France, they're currently building the nets now to be tested, but the plastic that they've currently got, that they've been using, has been breaking down in sort of like 5 years, 2 to 3 years. That's the sort of level that they're sort of looking at. You might want that plastic to break down at a faster rate, or you might want to break it down at a slower rate. That's something we're currently looking at. I would also say it's got to break down, not into microplastics, but into other things that are completely breaking downable.
Okay. Thank you, Jasper. I hope that's answered the question. I just want to bring Paul Boisseau in briefly. Paul, you've just mentioned a test number there. Did you want to say something further on that in terms of biodegradability? Are you still there, Paul?
Hello, everyone. Yes, no, I was just looking at some standards because there was a question. So I have just come across this test. I have never performed it, so actually I don't have the details, but it
you want
seems...
to say who you are on the Exemplar project quickly, Paul, and then I'll move on to another question. You just said who you are. It's a very important point in terms of taking ecotoxicology into account.
Yes, so I am a postdoctoral fellow within the Exemplar project, working at the University of Exeter. So on ecotoxicological aspects of plastics, plastics in circular economy. So whether fuel-based plastics, like polypropylene, for example, or bioplastics as well. And so, yeah. And I have put in comment as well an interesting paper about the biodegradability of materials, not specifically plastics, but of materials in natural environment. And there is a paragraph about the marine ecosystems. And so the authors are recommending, if we really want to understand the biodegradability of materials in marine environment, we have to test the biodegradability in different conditions, because it's not the same condition if the plastic is floating, if the plastic is on the shore or on the ground, on the sea ground. So they are recommending to do the test in at least 5 different environments. So yeah, it's an interesting paper. You can give a look.
And a very complex process in terms of ascertaining weathering, etc.
As well, yeah. So yeah, the thing about bioplastic, my opinion is it's promising. There is a lot to look into this field, but we still have to be aware of potential consequences that are unexpected. Like, it depends as well the amount of materials we are using. And we have to be as well careful still with the public perception, because if we are using huge quantities of bioplastics, even if they are biodegradable, it depends how they are managed as well, because we can't say they are biodegradable, so it's fine. For example, they can change the viscosity of the water, so it can change all the water movement, for example. So it can change as well the dynamic of species within an environment. For example, if it's on the seashore, it could, for example, lead to blooming of algae if there is a huge input of nutrients. So it's a promising way to look into, but we still have to be aware.
Yeah, so we need to make sure that it's fully tested. Yeah, otherwise there could be, as we've seen throughout the exemplar research project so far, it's everybody's trying to do the right thing, but what we want to try and make sure that we don't do is create something that's an unintended consequence and where it creates harm. Well, thank you very much, Paul. Likewise, if you can share that in the hub on the e-platform, that would be really fantastic. I'm just going to move on quickly now to some other questions, and then I think we're going to have to wrap up. So we've got, I'm not quite sure who that is, but it's somebody on a Huawei. Is there an industry standard of recycled content within nets? I'll put that back to our panel. Maybe Rob, do you know?
There we go. No, there isn't, unfortunately. There's actually quite a reluctance from industry to put recycled material back into nets, which is a bit of a shame. But unfortunately, with manufacturing as a whole, usually using virgin plastic is just a simple go-to. You know, they know the characteristics. They want as well within markets to be able to sell the most popular product. And unfortunately, there isn't really the demand in markets at the moment to be making recyclable nets. If we could prove demand, hopefully one of the industry leaders would sort of take up on that and actually look at investing in developing a means of getting recycled into the net materials, because I think that could be a really nice sort of
there's potential there to look into that further as a potential for opportunity, and to look at and draw out those barriers to why people aren't taking them forward. I mean, it needs to be fit for purpose, so all of those things need to be tested and designed and engineered appropriately. Thank you very much. We've got
one of our partners in France did some tests on this, and they found that using recycled materials, the strength in plastic was lost by about only 20%. So in my thought, I'll try and find the article and send it around to everyone, but my thought is that if net producers design for a 20% loss in their nets, then it should be okay. Just a thought.
Okay, yeah. Oh, Adam, do you want to add on to that? Thank you, Jasper.
Yeah. Okay. I've listened with some interest about the biodegradable route. Just from what I'm hearing on the key side, take it or leave it, guys. I think that's a complete blind. I've posted something in the comments. A couple of reasons. The first one is you're creating an open loop, not a closed loop economy. What you're actually generating, you're also making it, if you like, in quotes, acceptable to leave stuff in the sea. The third one is looking at just a simple hoo-ha over a couple of sky lanterns that somebody wanted to release tonight in aid of the NHS, and people doing things with supposedly biodegradable water balloons, which take literally years. I think we'd be shooting ourselves in both feet, in as much as we'll be saying we're doing something for green issues, but actually we're probably choking things for the next 400 years while it properly degrades at depth. Because I think Paul Boisseau's point was entirely correct. What might decompose in a laboratory isn't going to happen at 50 meters, certainly not on in the North Atlantic. Personally, I think Amanda's point that she's put in the chat is absolutely bang on the money. What we've got to do, I think, is make the end of life equipment valuable to somebody. Stop treating it like waste. And personally, I think what Rob Thompson's done is absolutely pioneering. But the very fact that he's had to go literally halfway across Europe to find the one and only identifiable recycling plant actually should be a cause of shame for the UK industry. What we're doing down here in the southwest is a microcosm. When you look at the amount of beam trawling going on in Scotland, I shudder to think what they do. I suspect they don't send it all to Scotland, to Denmark. Perhaps they do. I just don't know. What I think if anybody wants a call to action, it would be that we look at a way of onshoring and centralizing somewhere on the UK in order to minimize carbon travel footprint by not having to send it across Europe. And that's not some blind jingoistic call to arms. That's me saying, if you can do something in the UK that has a sound logistic chain and transport chains, the take up of this is going to be much greater. You've heard Rob say already, and it was a bit of a cause of alarm for me, that he's basically at capacity, and he's not able to basically do this at scale. And that's because he's trying to take something from one side of Europe, send it to another using probably quite expensive, probably the most expensive way of doing it if you're sending an HGV at 20 tons a time. Whereas if you think about Brixham alone, it's sending fish literally around the world. That means that 50% of those lorry journeys are going to be empty. So actually, we've already got a logistics chain. We just need to be innovative.
Yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox.
I think that's really, really, really interesting, actually, as a potential for an opportunity. And I think everybody's had to, due to our current unforeseen circumstances with COVID-19, logistics, everybody has had to stop and move to action very quickly to make changes to their supply chains and everything else. And although it is a devastating thing that's happening at the moment, there will also be great opportunities that come out of that. So, the time is now, isn't it, really, to be able to look at this further. I've just got a comment here.
Can I just add quickly something following Adam's comment, which I think that analyzing from all our perspectives, from all the today talks and speakers and other people working out there on plastics, it's very important to put all this knowledge together to tackle this problem from different views and from different angles, because one single view is not going to solve the problem. The problem is quite complex. And for example, from my own point of view, trying to collect data on the amount of fishing gear that is out there in the use for one single year, it's important for one part of the chain to know if it's possible and feasible for a company to establish in the Southwest, for example. That's just an idea and that's just a thought, but it can be one clear opportunity for companies or not. It depends on how realistic numbers can be really there. And if it's not a big company, then it's a small company, or if it's not, then it's some models like Rob Thompson model. So it's really important to really work together and put it to try to postulate and make it the best. I think just working together, yeah.
Brilliant. I'm very glad that you fortunately came up at the end there, Mary. Thank you very much, because you've been working really hard on this. Before we go, and we are going to have to go shortly, and thank you everybody for taking part and being within our audience. A few people are having to go at the moment. So Mary, would you like to talk about the questionnaires, and then I'll hand us over to Teresa. Hopefully you're still there, and Teresa will show that everyone where they can access the questionnaires so that they can provide us with their information.
Absolutely, very fast, very quick. As I mentioned, these two questionnaires were we made it together with John Harvey from the Environment Agency, and we've been collaborating close together to this project. And thanks to him in advance for all of this. So this service will help us to adjust this data and to get also deeper knowledge for the Environment Agency's projects, and hopefully for other people as well. So we will post these two surveys, one focused to fleet managers and the other one to harbor managers. And to help us, Lisa, we will ask you please to help us to answer in these very quick, fast, no more than 5 minutes questionnaires. And I think that's very much it. And Teresa is going to post the details, the links that can be followed to answer that service. And thank you very much, Teresa. And thank you very much in advance to all of you to be present today and for listening to all of us.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mary. So if you can just see there on the screen, this is so exemplarnet.org.uk is the e-platform, and you can get involved. Could you click on the get involved quickly, Teresa? Could you go back a step, do you think?
Yeah.
To show how simple it is. Thank you. It's also a good way of being able to capture all of you who've taken part today, so that we can continue this discussion. So you can just register your information, which is all protected and it adheres to GDPR regulations and the policy. And we have a privacy policy there, which you can see. And then once you're a member, you can go in and you can go into the hub. And we've got, if you just see on the right hand side there, we've got, it's a bit like Facebook. So there's a fishing, those are all the members that we've got so far. We've got about 93, which is great. But we'd very much like you to join. And we've got a fishing industry and plastic waste hub. So in there, we've put information about this webinar and also contact details. And if you can share any, you can upload documents, images. It's very interactive, so you can share their information and we can carry this on further. Within there, if we can just see, there are the 2 questionnaires, so you can literally just zap the QR codes. I'll also, and then you can complete those. And we'll put a deadline on there as well, but within the next 2 weeks, if we could have as many people within the fleet or the Harbour Commissioners sector, and that data and information is going to be invaluable. And obviously we'll get back to everybody who's involved with our updates. As anybody, if I can just go back to see the screen, if anybody's got any further questions, please email myself at ce-plastics@exeter.ac.uk, and I'll get back to you within the next 2 weeks. So if we could just go back off, so Teresa, that's lovely, thank you very much. I just want to say thank you very much to Teresa and Will for helping us out. Brendan, thank you very much. You fielded one of the Zoom rooms, and also to Peter. And I want to say a huge thank you. It's taken quite a bit of organisation, and obviously we're also reorganising our lives given the current situation working from home. So I just wanted to say thank you very much to our panel, to Maru for all of our work on the Exemplar project. Also to Jonathan Harvey, a huge thank you. This has been co-hosted with the Environment Agency, so we're incredibly grateful because it's been very interesting and informative. And it's about starting that conversation, isn't it? Adam, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Some great ideas there as well. So please, email those through and we can capture that. I'll send the information to the panel and we can get back to everybody who's got questions. Jasper Graham-Jones, again, thank you very much. I wish you well with your project, and also if we can continue the conversations. And Rob Thompson, finally, from Odyssey Innovations, thank you very much indeed. I will send around the recorded version of this, and I'll make sure that it's available as soon as possible on the e-platform so that everybody can see as well. I'll probably also tweet in the next couple of days so that people can see the recorded version, and please look out for that. You can share that on your Twitter feeds. So just like to say, yeah, huge thank you. And I think that'll be it. So thank you very much indeed.